In this video, we're going through some basic techniques to edit meshes in ProBuilder. Sup guys, Adam here from MYSTIQUE. I make games and I help others to learn game dev. Sorry, I was out of action last week due to a cold, and now I'm eager to get back into the flow of things, so let's get started with this tutorial. If you're new to this channel, do consider subscribing to get game dev tips, tutorials, and inspiration. And hit that bell icon to get notified whenever I upload new videos. Selecting elements is the first step you should take when you want to change your mesh. ProBuilder provides a whole range of selection tools that makes it easy for you to change and select elements that is available across the meshes. At the top of the screen, you'll notice there's 4 icons. These represent the different elements that you are currently selecting when you are focusing on one particular mesh in ProBuilder. By default, the top leftmost icon is the object selection tool. So if I click on this cube right here, right now I'm selecting the entire object. And if I toggle by pressing G, it toggles into a different editing mode and it starts to zoom in and start to select the vertex. So this vertex selection right here is allowing us to click on these different points within this cube object. So 3D objects, for those of you who are new in 3D, are basically made out of different points which are called vertexes or vertices. And when you select this particular icon, it allows us to click and select different points of vertices. So if you hold on Shift, you can select a few of them at once. You can also select just one at a time. If you press H, it's going to select the different element. And the next element it's selecting right here is the edge selection. So an edge is actually a line. It's a line that connects 2 vertices. So there's one vertex here, and there's another one right here. And when we select and toggle between edge and vertex mode, you can see now it translates to the entire line being selected. And finally, if you press H again, it's going to toggle face mode or face selection. A face is essentially different vertices that are connected together, forming a closed loop. So if I select this face right here, it's essentially made out of 4 vertices. 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can also see this once you select edge selection. You can see that there are 4 edges being selected that forms this entire face, which is essentially a square. So that's the basic concept of the different modes of selection, and these are what we call different elements of selection within ProBuilder. There is a shortcut where you can just double click on a face and it will select the entire object automatically. Now with a particular element selected, like for example if you select this vertex right here, you can actually transform it, and that includes translating or movement. So you can drag this across and it will translate it and modify the shape as so. You can also rotate. So you press E in Unity. You don't see much here because we're just rotating one vertex, but let's modify, and let's say we rotate this part. You can see right now as I select the edge and rotate it, it starts to skew this object a bit more. You can also scale, and that will also skew and change the mesh even further. These have different effects as you select different parts of the selection. So if I select the face and I move this out, it will do a different effect. Same thing if I were to scale it down and if I were to rotate it as well. If you were to select the edge, different things happen. and it depends on the range of influence that you are implementing onto the mesh itself. So I'm just influencing this portion of the mesh, which is just one line or one edge, versus if I were to select an entire face and rotate it, I'm selecting multiple edges and vertices to move along. So that's an important concept to understand as well. And you might find that when I move certain things, it's snapping. That's because I'm using ProGrids. If you have not enabled ProGrids or you don't know how to install it or set it up, I've made a video about it, and you can find the link up here and in the description below. Another important technique, and it's one that you'll use a lot of the time, is extrusion or extruding. So an extrusion is essentially referring to the dragging of a face out of the mesh. So the face is growing out of the mesh, so to speak. So let's select this face right here. And to do this, you can hold on Shift, and while you have the movement tool selected, you can extrude by dragging it out like so. And then you can keep on going as far as you need to. You can select multiple faces as well and extrude that way. So you might be wondering what's the difference between this extrusion process versus just moving the entire face out. So if I were to just select this face right now and move it out, it looks very similar, right? The difference is, you can see now, this is one similar face or one similar section of the mesh. It's selecting this entire few boxes right here. Whereas, as you can see, the one that we extruded, they are separated. And so this plays an important role later on once you start manipulating these different shapes in different ways, and you want different parts of them to behave and divide in a different way. Another form of editing is something called insetting. Now, insetting refers to dragging of edges of a face inside the mesh. Technically, you can also drag it outside the mesh, and I'll show you how to do that. So basically, you select a face and then you select rotation by pressing R in Unity, and then you hold on Shift and then you drag the face into itself. So you can see right now there's a preview where you are creating a smaller square on top of this square. You let it go, and then as you can see here now, there are more faces being cut into this existing face. And then actually from here, what we can do is actually either move the new square upwards, and it will create this kind of effect where it drags the other parts, the other edges as well. If I undo this, and then if I were to extrude, which is the same thing we did in the previous example, it has this effect instead, where it does not manipulate or influence the other edges around it, and it just grows from that center point and creates a new section of the mesh. So that's another way to understand the difference between moving and extruding a face, and you can now use a combination of these abilities. Now you can use a combination of these techniques to create more advanced objects such as a pillar. The other thing you can do is also inset outwards. So by selecting this mesh, and I want to select scale right here and hold down Shift, and if I were to scale outward, it also does an inset, but now it creates a flat surface or flat plane outside. And then this flat plane is different from the flat plane that is kind of hidden right here, which is from this column that we created earlier. So if we were to move this, it will now move the surface up the entire face up, and it will then stretch out these edges as it's influenced by the movement. If I were to undo all that, and if I were to select this and extrude once again, you'll see that it now grows a bigger box on top. So all these techniques where you select different parts of the mesh, like the vertex, and you translate or move them around to maybe selecting edges and extruding those edges. You can create more complex shapes just by using these few basic techniques alone. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. It is due to their generosity that I'm able to make more games and more videos like this one. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and consider subscribing for more game dev tips, tutorials, and inspiration. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.